I'm Mary Pipino, and welcome to Fit for You, the show that teaches you how to live a healthier and more fit lifestyle. Welcome to 2015. I love this time of year because everybody's ready to start thinking about getting healthy and fit. But you know, the first place you have to start is up here. And I have a very, very dear friend, a fabulous guest that's going to give us all the tips we need to start to live a healthier and more fit 2015. Welcome to Fit for You. Everybody needs their go-to person, and I'm so fortunate to have my go-to person and someone who I so respect and admire and has helped me through many difficult times, my dear friend Rose Memo. Welcome, Rose.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here with you.
We always love having you. And for those of you who don't know Rose, she's done prior shows with me. Rose is a licensed, practical, clinical counselor. I call you my lifesaver because you are.
Well, thank you.
And as we start the new year, we're going to talk a little bit about a very personal situation. But before we get to that, you know, the show today is all about adopting resolutions and sticking to them. You know, it's easy to make them, it's hard to stick to them. So I thought, who better than to help us through than our go-to person, Rose. So let's, you know, why do people have such a difficult time sticking to resolutions? Where do we start?
Well, we all start off with having the best of intentions, and it wears on us. You want to lose weight, don't want to eat carbs, you're going to exercise more, and all of the programs on television will show you all of the ways to do it. But about a month into it, it starts wearing on you, and you just say, well, I'm going through things mindlessly, and that's what we're going to talk about today, mindlessness versus mindfulness. And Mark Hyman says we walk through life and stress and family and all of the things that we don't even understand happen, and we walk through the kitchen and we get a cookie or a piece of candy, and we don't even know that we've done it. Or we say, oh, I'm not going to exercise today. And that's called mindlessness or being unaware. So today I thought maybe we would talk about how to become balanced and aware and constantly be vigilant about how we can stay aware and become mindful throughout the entire year, not just for the first month of the new year.
People and scientific research has now found it all starts up here. It starts in the mind. So before you can think about the exercise and the eating or stop smoking or being a little more focused on whatever, it's got to start at the top.
Well, it's a triad. The mind, the body, and the spirit, or the soul, if you want to call it that. And the triad is significant for those of us who are of certain religions. You know, there's the triad. But medicine is now saying it's a combination of all three for healing powers. And it really does start with the mind, but you have to incorporate the spirit, which we'll talk about today, as well as the body. All three have to work in sync with each other, or it doesn't work.
And I'm probably a great example of someone who, when I hear spirit, you naturally think of something religious, which it can be, but that's not the spirituality we're talking about here. And you really helped me to understand that. Explain, what is spirituality?
The spirit, I mean, you're right. Most people think spirituality has to be in a church or a synagogue or some worship facility. And for some people it really is. For many people, their spirit is, they are filled with the Spirit when they go to church. But you know, we have a really good friend who was raised in a Christian religion, and he said, it doesn't get to me. I don't get anything out of going to church. But when I go fly fishing, I get my spiritual energy from the environment, from nature. And he said, when I'm fly fishing, I feel God's presence in my life. So it can be in a church. It can be in a stream. Friends of ours in St. Louis, by definition, go to an ethical society, and every Sunday morning they go to the projects. and they clean the projects. And that is where they get their spiritual energy. And it's a matter of energy and how you get this energy. Sometimes it is from religion. Sometimes it's from a stream. Sometimes it's from a dear friend, talking to a friend that you feel the spirit that's within you. And we all need that. We all need that positive energy or that spiritual base. Where it takes us, we'll talk about a little bit later.
And so the important component is understanding what does it for you, and only you can figure that out, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes it comes from your family of origin. Sometimes it's you found it yourself on your own path. And the spiritual path is one that you as an individual need to find. Where am I going on my spiritual path? And where will it take me? What adds meaning to my life? And for some people, as I said, it is religion. For others, it's not. It's in other areas. And it doesn't matter where you get that spiritual energy. But if you don't have it, it's a negative force in your life. If you're missing one piece of the triad, it's not going to work for you very well.
And that fulfillment, there's no right or wrong, because oftentimes people will say, oh, that's not spiritual, or they may be critical of what someone feels, well, gee, that makes me feel good, or maybe they shy away from it because maybe society doesn't feel it's acceptable, or family and friends. That's wrong, correct?
There is no right or wrong. It's what is in your heart, and as long as it is for the good, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Many of us choose our religion to bring us to that sense of spirituality, but I have to tell you, in the past couple of years, it was my religion and my faith that brought me to it, but it was also an illness that brought me closer to my sense of spirit. And for me, I relied on my religion and my faith, but some people, that would not cut it for them. That would not work for them. And so there is no right or wrong.
Where would someone that is totally lost about, okay, I want to find my spirit, so I want to start this journey, what do I do?
Well, I think you need to go back in time to your own childhood roots. And I really believe family of origin kind of tells you the good things that you can attain through spirit or religion, and sometimes the bad things. And you have to know where your family of origin was, where you've come from, and you either have to accept those things in your life, or you have to say, no, I'm making another choice. So going back to that family of origin is critical, and some people have a very negative piece of when it deals with family of origin, and some people have a very positive piece. Oprah Winfrey says about 96% of us have a negative experience with family of origin. I'd like to think she was a little wrong with that percentage, but we have to go back in time, because I believe throughout our entire life we're triggered to go back to those early childhood experiences.
And I want to spend time on this because it's really important, because you're the person, when I was going through some difficult times, that brought me back. And even though there was some negative and there was some positive, but for me, understanding the negative, facing it, and then being able to understand it and deal with it, I was able to turn it into a positive, because now I was able to say, okay, now I understand why I'm having these, negative feelings, so to speak, or why I get upset, or why I react this way. But I was able to solve the problem and work through it.
Right. And I think all of us need to go back in time, and that's the first thing that I do when I'm talking to someone and I'm counseling someone, is say, let's go back. Tell me about your family. Tell me your story. And I'm a great one to hear people's stories. I love to talk to people, and not what are you doing for a living or what are your interests. Tell me your story. Your story is important to me. And oftentimes your story begins with those childhood of origin issues. I'll give you a personal example. My father died when I was 7 years old. And I remember hearing my mother run out of his bedroom, and she was crying, and something's happened to Dad. And I ran in, and I was the only one home at the time with Mom, and I watched my father pass away. I watched the ambulance come and take him away. Now, that is a really awful experience for a child, but I have to tell you, I don't ever get off the phone with anyone that I love without saying I love you, because that may be the last time I say I love you. So that early childhood experience for me, which could have been very, very negative, turned out to be something that is very positive in my life now. I realized at a very young age, we may not have tomorrow. You better make the best of today. That is part of my story. And it's not a story that it's a happy story, because I lost my father at age 7, but from that negative story, I have positive reinforcement and positive energy to say, whoa, I don't want a moment to pass by without telling the people that I love that I care that much about them.
And you make a great point. Everybody has negativity, and you're going to face negativity. The key is taking it, and I've yet to find something so bad that you couldn't be able to find some good in it, some reason why, how it can make you a better person in the go forward.
I agree with you, but I also think that people who are not incorporating that mindfulness, that are not in touch with their spirit, when bad things happen to them, they become bitter because they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to cope with it. They don't know how to react to it. They don't know how to respond to it. That is the critical piece today of what we call mindfulness, or being aware, being on that spiritual path. Because if you don't, then you may not see hope.
Well, and I think what happens is, like you say, people don't want to face it or think about it, or maybe even they don't even realize. So they're looking for this fulfillment, and they're lost. So they turn to food, or they turn to drugs, or they turn to alcohol, or they just let themselves go and say, you know what, I really don't care. I'm not going to exercise. I'm just I'm too stressed. And these factors become what can destroy the person.
Absolutely.
So facing and understanding and fixing, that's why this mindfulness is so critical.
It is very critical. It is very critical. And just as you said, you can face these things, and if you walk through it, and that's what counselors do, is walk people through their pain. If they don't walk through their pain, they need something to dull their pain. And how many of us have turned to chocolate or alcohol or drugs? The drug culture today is off the chart for our young people. But for those of us who like chocolate, chocolate always worked. Chocolate always works. And when you're feeling bad, it worked. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I am saying you walk through that pain, you identify it. And that's being mindful and being in the present. Being in the present is saying, I feel sad. I feel depressed. I feel angry. I'm going to feel it. I'm not going to let it control me. I'm going to identify, where did it come from? Am I sad because it triggered an old memory of when I was a child? And so if it did, I'm identifying it. I'm feeling the sadness, but I'm not going to let it control me. So what do I have to do? What are the strategies that I need to put into place so it doesn't make me feel so bad that I lay on the couch for 3 days?
What are the strategies?
Well, some of the strategies are, if you need to talk to someone, and I really believe in communication. I mean, that's one of my strong suits, is talking through things. And I believe that sharing your story. Rachel Raymond, who wrote Kitchen Table Wisdom, has created a facility for cancer victims. And she said, I want to hear your stories. I want you to share your stories. And when you find a healthy community, share your stories with the healthy community. Communicating and sharing your story is healing. It's healing. And she has created thousands of stories of people that have been healed by just sharing what they need to. I have friends that I talk to every day. If I didn't have them in my life, I think I would be sadder. When I'm having a good day, they're right there championing the good days. When I'm having a bad day, they're there applauding and saying, we'll get you through this. And so consequently, talking about your story and where you are is an unbelievable healing process. Exercising, you can talk about that more than I can. If you feel bad and you don't want to do it and you just get up and take a walk or get on the treadmill or get on the elliptical or stand in place watching television and marching in place, you will feel better. Your serotonin level is better and you will feel better. Whatever it takes, if you are really sad that day and you're feeling uncomfortable, maybe getting a massage, maybe going to lunch with a friend, taking a Tai Chi course, whatever it takes to get you out of that little funk that you are in is a positive and gives you positive energy.
And finding your special thing. As you were talking, I love your wisdom because I'm thinking about a couple of things I want to go back to. First of all, when you talk about exercising, and I am a good example because I've been through some really difficult things. I've been so fortunate in my life, but we've been through some tough things. You know,
Absolutely.
The worst thing ever was losing my dad, and then last October I lost my mom. And I through ups and downs, it's a struggle sometimes. I don't want to get up and get on that treadmill, or I don't want to go work out. But you know what? If I don't do it, then I feel worse because now I feel like not only do I have this negative whatever that I don't control, now I've let myself down in something I do control. I do control if I can make myself feel better. I do control my health to some extent between what I eat, how I exercise, how I let stress overcome me. So that's what I try to emphasize that to people. It's not easy to do it, but once you get into it, it's so, how many times you're like, I really don't want to go to dinner tonight, or I really don't want to go see that movie or whatever, but you're going because a friend or a relative or something, come on. And you have a great time when you're there. You're like, oh, I'm so glad I did that.
You have choices.
Right, that's exercise.
You have choices. And sometimes the choices are big choices and sometimes they're little choices. But as soon as you know that you have a choice, even when you're ill, you have a choice. You have a choice to follow the doctor's recommendation, or you have a choice to not do what the doctor says, or you have a choice to do something homeopathically. And as soon as you have the choice, I believe you make the choice that's best for you.
We were going to talk about this a little later, but since you're bringing it up, let's talk about it now. So you went through a really, really tough time a couple of years ago.
A year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, I was swimming in a pool with my grandchildren, and my husband walks in and says, I have bad news. You have a cancer. And through lots of testing, we'll keep this shorter, I had a fallopian tube cancer that had already metastasized to the omentum. And within 2 weeks, I thought I was perfectly well, and within 2 weeks I was in surgery with 3 surgeons and had everything removed, and when it was over, they said, now you need 6 months of chemotherapy. So it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I had to make a choice. Do I do the chemotherapy or not do the chemotherapy? Or do I do something homeopathically? And I chose to go along with the chemotherapy, and I chose to make it a positive experience. Now, my husband says there were times I was a little cranky and a little grouchy. I didn't see that, but it was 6 long months of being focused on a cancer. And would I survive this?
And by the way, Dr. Richard Memo, who is your husband, who is just a fabulous person. He was my father's urologist and cured his bladder cancer. I will be grateful to him forever, but I love him dearly. So it had to be a really tough message to deliver to you, knowing and understanding. It just wasn't someone that didn't understand what was going to, follow from the news he had to give you.
Well, he had tears in his eyes when he told me that. And I said, stop. Now tell me what we have to do. Because I'm a real task-oriented person, and it's like, I don't like living in depression. And he said, well, this is what we have to do, and this is what we have to go through. And I made a choice at that time that I was going to keep my life as close to normal as I could, and keep his life as close to normal as we could. I had 18 chemotherapies in Cleveland at the Seidemann Center, and I had very good friends who wanted to take me, so my husband only had to take me to 5. I ran out of chemos before I ran out of good friends, so I was blessed. And consequently, I made a choice to be positive about it, and I believe that is a key. That is an absolute key. I was very blessed in that I did not have a lot of the side effects that a lot of the people that I saw at this center had, and it broke my heart to see them. But I could come home and still function fairly well. I had a lot of extra help around the house and things like that, but I could really function. We still babysat for our grandchildren. And we still went out. Someone said, you can't go out to dinner on chemo. I went out to dinner with my mother every week, and to lunch, and my husband and I did go out to dinner whenever we chose to. I was really cautious not to be around sick people. I knew what I had to do to be healthy, because if I were not healthy, then I could not get one of the treatments. But I was determined. Someone told my husband, tell her she's going to lose her hair after the second treatment, including my oncologist in Cleveland. And I walked into the bathroom and I looked into the mirror and I said, you will not lose all your hair, you will not be sick to your stomach, and you will have energy. Now, that is not the case for everyone who goes through this. I was blessed. Mm-hmm. I lost 2/3 of my hair and it looked terrible, and I did eventually wear a wig, but I did not get sick. Unless I ate fish, I couldn't eat fish. And I kept my life as normal as I could, with this kind of hanging over your head. And I didn't realize it until my last chemo, when they did a CAT scan. He said, you're fine. And I said, whoa, I thought that was going to take care of it. I always thought I was going to be fine. But that positive attitude got me through. Besides the positive attitude, we had really close friends. We're Catholic. And so we kind of have that kind of a faith, and not everyone, I'm not suggesting everyone be Catholic or have the faith that we have, but we had really good priest friends and monks that prayed with me and prayed for me and gave me blessings. And my faith is what really got me through. And that, for me, the spiritual piece was my faith.
And they're, like you say, it's not the same for everybody.
No.
That was what brought you that comfort of getting into your spirituality.
Absolutely.
Just like fly fishing was doing for your friend.
For Tom,
yeah.
or something else. Someone else might like Tai Chi or whatever. But for me, I wasn't angry one day. I asked my husband one day, I said, am I angry? Do you see me angry? He goes, no, you just go right to your spirituality. And for me, that's what got me through. I am not saying my religion got me through, although I relied very heavily on my religion, my faith and my spiritual side, the energy that I got. And I saw miracles everywhere. I started looking at life differently. Scott Hamilton, who is the Olympic skater,
yes,
had a testicular cancer 20 years ago. He was just on television fairly recently, and he said, when you've had a cancer or any life-threatening illness, it gives you an enlightenment that no one else can really understand. It changes your way of thinking. It changes you from the inside out. And I understood exactly what he said. It didn't change me in that I didn't want to spend time with my family or the grandkids or wanted to do for me. I wanted to do more. I wanted to see them more. I wanted to create more memories. And I started saying, whatever you have in store for me, whatever door you open, I am ready for. I am ready for. My spirituality carried me to the point where I wasn't afraid of death. I didn't want to suffer, that's for sure, but I wasn't afraid of what was in store for me because I knew I would be okay no matter what, no matter what.
And amazingly, weren't you able to swim? I know swimming is one of your go-to exercises, probably your number one, right?
I did a lot of things that a lot of people can't do, and I don't want to give the wrong impression on the air for people who are going through this. When I had two of my sons, two of the three of them were able to take me to a chemo, you look around and you see people that can't walk, that are in wheelchairs. Their legs are altered by the chemo. They feel terrible. I thought I looked better than I probably did, but that's my positive attitude. Yes, I was able to swim. I made a choice that I felt like chemo going in, if I exercise, chemo will go out just as fast. So I exercised an hour a day throughout chemo. Not everybody can do that. I'm not suggesting that that is what anyone does. But I was blessed in that I could do that. So I got on the treadmill or the elliptical an hour a day, even prior to chemo. If chemo was a little later, I would do it early in the morning and then go to chemo in Cleveland. And then the next day I would get back on the treadmill, and the nurses at this center said they thought I did that well because I was able to exercise. The chemo did what it was supposed to do, and then it was out of my system as quickly as possible. I stayed away from sick people. I drank a lot of water. I put a purifier into our house because I knew water was good for you, but I wanted it pure water. I swam as much as I could. I love swimming laps, so I swam as much as I could and exercised. And unfortunately, they were also pouring steroids into my body, so I was eating a lot of things that I normally don't eat, which I've given up since then because I was very hungry. I was just very hungry. But I handled it very well. Not everyone can handle it as well as I did. And so I am not critical, and I am not suggesting that everyone do what I did. Some people can't. When I saw many, many people at the center, they couldn't have exercised for 10 minutes.
But you know what they need to communicate is, you know, and the loved ones around them, what can we do to make you feel better? And maybe it's just someone sitting there holding their hand so that they can get into a more mindful place and close their eyes and think of something lovely. And maybe that little bit of mindful exercise can help pull them through.
Absolutely.
Or it doesn't have to be anything intense, but it's important, and I think too, that people that are sick, well, this is several minutes ago, and I said there were two things I want to get to. This other part I wanted to get to is when you talk about being able to communicate and talk. I think the second half of that, I find it very beneficial to be able to communicate and share, especially when I'm confused with someone you really connect with like you, to help me figure out what I can't figure out on my own. But then I find it very valuable to be a good listener, because I learn from listening to other people, hey, I'm not alone in this thing, or maybe now, how can I help you? Tell me what how can I maybe help you? Because I get a lot of joy out of helping other people as well, as I know you do. So, but that's very fulfilling to me.
Well, and during this process, I had a really hard time talking about it. I think because I was blindsided by it. Whenever someone would call, sometimes I wouldn't answer the phone because I didn't want to tell the story. It's easy for me to tell the story today, and for a long time it has been easy. But for the first several months, I'd say, Richard, you talk to people. I really can't do that. And so my friends I would talk to every day, and whatever I wanted to talk about, they would listen. And I would try to get out of myself to a certain degree and say, tell me what's going on in your life now. I wanted to hear their story. And I think you're absolutely right. Listening is critical. And it can't just be a monologue, it has to be a dialogue. I had one really aunt by marriage through my husband's family who sent me a letter every week throughout my entire illness.
Aww.
She never called because she said, I knew you might not want to talk. If you ever do, I'm here for you. But she sent me a letter just encouraging me, or a card, Uncle Nick and I love you. And she would tell me all of the things that were going on in their life. And it was something, as I was sitting, and there were times when after chemo, that I had to sit. I was too exhausted. I'd read her letter. And it was the blessing. So for each person, you need to know, what can you do to help them on their level, what they want, what they need, and that's critical.
And if we take it back to how we started the show about making resolutions and sticking to them, if you want to make a resolution, there's obviously something you want. We don't make resolutions for things we don't want. So you know you want it. Now, so many people think, but I'll never get there. I can't do it. I can't. I think this is a great story because it shows having a good will and a good attitude, and then finding your support system, sharing, talking, listening, not to the world, but to those, your group that you feel very comfortable with, or your special people.
Right.
It's not something that's flip a switch. Making a resolution, living a healthier lifestyle, being good to yourself. It's not flip a switch. It's a process.
It's a process, and if you look at the whole picture, it's overwhelming.
Yes.
You have to take little snippets, little bites. I call them, I have one client who doesn't like the term boundaries, so we use limits. And to have small limits or small goals. Because if you look at the whole picture in the whole year and say, I have to lose 25 pounds, and I can't eat carbs, and I can't do this, and I have to exercise every day, you'll be overwhelmed. But if you say, all right, I'm going to start off with 10 minutes a day, exercising. When I go to bed, I'm going to meditate. And I believe in the power of meditation, and how you meditate is your choice. I tend to meditate in my old religious way, and I do it through the rosary. I mean, that's me. But how you meditate is your personal goal, and it's your personal thing. And so I think meditation is wonderful. So if you start out, instead of saying, this is my huge resolution, I'm going to exercise 10 minutes a day. I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes a day, and at some point I will call a friend a couple of times a week. They're small resolutions versus large ones, because when you have these grandiose expectations of yourself, you're bound to fail.
And so important, something that you said. This is a message that if our viewers walk away with nothing else today, don't start out by saying, I can't have this food, I can't do this, I can't do that. Start by saying, I can eat all the vegetables I want. I can enjoy my fruits and whole grains and high quality fats and good lean. I can go for a walk. I can. Make it about what I can.
Absolutely.
A dear friend would always, love the saying from, a famous gentleman that says, if you say you can, you will. And if you say you can't, you won't. And we're back to the mindfulness, right? If you say I can't, how are you going to do it? I can't do that.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
Whatever you say you're going to do, it's called the law of attraction. That's what will be attracted to you. And you're absolutely right. I can. And that's what I said. I can go through this chemo. I will, and I can, and I will do it on my terms. Again, I was very blessed to be able to do it on my terms. Not everyone can do that. A second round chemo or a third round chemo, I might be saying something else if that ever happens. But yeah, I think you say what you want attracted to you. You say what you want attracted to you.
You have a great story that I was going to open with, but we're
Right.
quite a ways down the show. But I
Right.
want you to tell the story about the cutting stone.
The stone maker,
Yes.
the stone cutter. Rachel Raymond, who has written Kitchen Table Wisdom, she is a physician, and she has worked with thousands and thousands of cancer patients, tells this story. Where do you want to be in your life? So the interviewer goes up to the first stone cutter and says, "What are you doing?" And the stone cutter says, "I'm cutting stones. That's all I'm doing, cutting stones." So he goes up to the second stone cutter and he says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm cutting stones to earn money. I need money for my family." He says, "All right." So he goes up to the third stone cutter and he says, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm cutting stones. I'm going to build a lighthouse. I don't want the people who are on the ships out in our bay to wreck their ships on the reef. I want to do something for humanity, for my legacy, for posterity. I want to do something that says, I was here and I helped people." I think that is an important distinction. Sometimes when we're working, and mindfulness says when you're doing something, you do it and put all of your focus on doing it. And some people need to cut stones. Mm-hmm. Some people need to put their priority of their kids and their family, so they're cutting stones to make a living. And then there are those people who are on this high-functioning spiritual path that says, I want to make my mark on humanity, on the world, on people. And so I want to do something more with these stones, and that's my goal. That's my goal.
And I love that story too, because if you are cutting stones and you're just happy cutting stones, that's great. But if you feel like all I'm doing is cutting stones and you're not feeling good about it, think about, okay, I'm cutting stones now for this reason, and then my cutting stones are going to lead to this legacy. So you can take that as the base of your path.
Absolutely.
And turn it into something fabulous.
Absolutely. And I believe every one of us, no matter where, if you're just cutting stones to cut stones or you're cutting stones to build a lighthouse, I believe that we need to be on a spiritual path. Mm-hmm. And that goes hand in hand with the mindfulness, the mind, the body, the spirit. I have to tell you, 45 years ago, we didn't talk about that, but we are really in tune to it now. Mm-hmm. Mindfulness is a fairly new concept, but it is a very powerful one, that triad, mind, body, spirit, or soul, if you want to say soul. And as soon as you get on that path, as soon as you say, yeah, I want to be on that spiritual path, it's a difficult one, but you will see things around you that are amazing. And the law of attraction will bring to you whatever you need. For example, I walked into Panera's one day, and I was having kind of a down day. It was right before I was getting my blood work for my appointment today with my oncologist, which turned out very well, but that day I was scared. And the irony was, a woman that I see in church said, "Hi, how are you? Let's sit and talk." And by the end of our conversation, I knew there were no coincidences. She was meant to be there. I was meant to see her. And I felt good when I walked out. When you are open to that, mm-hmm. those little miracles happen all around us, mm-hmm. all over the place. But you have to be open to it and receptive to it. And that's the important key. That's what is so vital about being on a spiritual path.
You're very big on journalizing, and I have gotten much more into it after working with you, a few years ago, and I find it very powerful. But I think another important message maybe for the audience is, if you're trying to find your spirituality or go back into your path, and it can be a little book you keep by yourself that nobody else has to see if you choose to keep it very private. But maybe you just start thinking about some bad things that happened to you, or positive or whatever, and writing them down and thinking, or just write down, what's really bothering me? I'm not happy. I don't know why I'm not happy. Start writing, and maybe then you'll start to think about why you're not happy. Then start to write down maybe, well, I'm not happy about this and I'm not happy about that. Then that'll lead you to thinking about something else. And if you could touch upon journalizing a little bit and how it can help you to become, more mindful.
I am a firm believer in journals. I have them all over the house, and I've always said to my kids, if you want to know who I am, pick up a journal and read it. No one has done that yet. I'm sure that they will all read it when I'm gone and saying, what was Mom thinking when she wrote this?
Write a beautiful book, though.
Maybe. I am a firm believer that, and you don't have to journal every day. I don't journal every day. I journal not only the things that maybe bother me, I journal the good things, the things that I want to remember, and the people that I want to remember, because I think that is energy producing as just writing down all of your gripes and complaints. But what I do is write down the data of what happened. And then I write down what I have felt because of the data or circumstance or situation of what has happened. And then I say, what have I learned about myself through this? And it's a good way, it's a positive way. And how will I deal with this situation, again, in a very positive way? So it's not just putting all of your complaints down. It is writing just data. It is getting in touch with your feelings, which that is what everyone who teaches mindfulness says. You need to be in touch with your feelings always. And sometimes that's hard. I'm a firm believer that sometimes when you see people who are angry, the underneath feeling is that they're really very hurt.
How about relationships?
Yes.
How many times?
Yes.
Because everyone wants to be loved and appreciated. I don't care who they are.
Absolutely.
So when you feel rejected, many times it comes across as anger.
Is anger, and you're really hurt. Now, to the opposite of that, when someone has come into my office and they're just sobbing and crying and they're so in touch with sadness, I'll say, what are you really angry about? And usually anger, oftentimes, is underneath. And even when someone has died, people are crying. They're really angry that their loved one is gone. So it's a double-edged sword. You have to be in touch with what is the underneath feeling. And so not always do I know what I'm feeling. And so when I'm journaling, if I just keep writing and the pen just keeps going and going and going, and then it's like, that's the feeling I'm feeling. And then I can get in touch with it. And then I'll say, all right, how can I learn from that? What have I learned about myself? And how can I do something differently that's positive, that's good, all for the good? And so journaling is a real important part of healing. Sharing that with someone is as good if you share it with a friend. But sometimes you just want to write it to yourself and you don't want to forget it. And so I'm a firm believer in journaling. And it doesn't have to be every day. Sometimes it's once every 6 months. And that's okay.
And I'll tell you, I find journaling powerful at these times. And we all, fall back into them. Or like when you're having, a bad day, you're having a bad, or it's like, I just want to go eat a quart of ice cream. Instead of going and eating the quart of ice cream, go and get a pen and a paper and start writing down, okay, why do I want to eat this quart of ice cream?
Yes.
What is really aggravating me? Am I really hungry? Nobody needs a quart of ice or whatever it is.
Exactly.
If you're, if it's too many, drinks or whatever I need to go take a pill. Do you really? Maybe you need to go sit down and think about, why do I really need that?
Well, the other piece of that is if you wake up in the middle of the night, many of us wake up at 3 in the morning, and some of my friends
I'm notorious with pen and paper by the bed, because if I have something on my mind or I know I've got to get something done or...
You'll wake up.
Oh, yeah.
It'll hang right there.
Yes.
We've all said we should have a walkie-talkie next to our bed and say, are you up? Let's go for coffee somewhere.
I like that, because I'm usually by myself. Oh, yeah.
We've never done it, but we always say we should. But you always have the pen and paper, and sometimes the things that lay heavy on my mind, if I wake up at 3 in the morning, if I write them down, then it's like, well, I'll remember that in the morning, and I've written it down, and I can let it go. That letting go is such an important piece of mindfulness. We hold on to things. Sometimes we need a lot of chocolate. I say chocolate, whatever you need. I have a friend who eats potato chips, so she needs a lot of potato chips. I need a lot of chocolate to hold those uncomfortable feelings down. But if you write it down, you let it go. It's done. It's there, and you don't have to think about it anymore. And if you want to think about it, you wake up in the morning, you look at your journal, and you went, oh yeah, that's what I felt. But that letting go of uncomfortable things is truly an important part of the spiritual piece, and it's an important part of mindfulness, a very important part of mindfulness, letting go. Those of us who are moms have a real hard time of letting go. I always use the example that I was real good at roots for my kids. You know, all of my kids are married and married to wonderful people, and we have 13 grandchildren, and I'm fine with it now. But for a long time, it was hard for me to give them wings, you know, and you need to do that, roots and wings. And so it was much more difficult for me years and years ago. They've been all married for a very long time to really very good people, and all on a very beautiful spiritual path, and I'm very proud of that.
But you know, and that's a great point too, though, because, and you love them, I know, more than anything. But sometimes, you know, maybe they're asking you to babysit or do something with the kids, and you have something else planned, and so often we feel guilted that we can't say no. Boundaries. Just touch upon that a little bit, because that's a big thing with people. It's like, I have, you know, it's my responsibility. I have to do this for my aging parents. I have to do this for my kids. I have to, I mean, there are certain things you have to do, but do you really, you know, can you put yourself first sometimes?
And I'm not real good at that, by the way. Boundaries are not my strong suit, by the way. And my daughter will always say that. She'll say, Mom never says no. Mom never says no. I have a real hard time with that. So I believe in small limits and small boundaries, because the big boundaries I'm not really good at. And so I have to really work at that. I have a real hard time saying no to the people that I love. And they are my challenge, because I can say no in business, you know, and I've helped with business mediation, and I will tell people, just say no to that, and I can say no for you. But for my own family, when the emotions get in the middle of it, I have a really hard time with it. So you have choices again. Remember that word I just said, choices. You can say yes all the time, and you can be silent, and you can build up a whole bunch of anger, and then that anger and that silence turns to anger turned inward, turns to depression. And I think that's a bad energy force. You can say no and be upset with people, and I'm saying anyone, not just your children or anyone, and you can walk away. But that builds no relationships if you do that, if you just walk away from people. Or you can be silent for a while and say, let me think about that.
That's the best.
Yes. And then come back and say, you know, I can do this, but I can't do that. Or I can take care of you or take you shopping tomorrow, but I can't do it the next day, and qualify it. And so it's a small boundary. It's a small limit. And I'm much more comfortable with that than I can't walk away from any of the people I love or my friends. I don't think that's a good way to be with anyone.
But it's okay when they ask you, you don't feel compelled, well, I have to give them an answer. Well, I was backed into a corner. Take a deep breath.
Yes.
Say, let me get back to you.
I'll get
let
back.
me think about it.
Let me look at my calendar and let me get back to you. And then saying, yeah, I can do this till 10 o'clock at night, but I can't do it beyond that time. So you're setting small boundaries. And for those of us who are not really good at boundaries, setting small boundaries is the first step. And that is a key. Setting boundaries is critical to being on the spiritual path. I really believe we need to do that, or we'll be taken advantage of.
Yes.
Or we'll be the silent sufferers. That's not healthy for you.
Nope.
And I am a firm believer that illness, depression, cancer, heart disease, can be rooted or at least made worse by the stresses that we bring on to ourselves.
Science has proven that.
Absolutely.
That it definitely has an impact.
Yes, yes.
One thing before we close, because this is another problem, and I get asked this question a lot, and I'm not really sure, I'm not qualified to know the answer. I try to be supportive. I will have a person that's in a marriage or with a significant other or whatever, and one of them is, a little bit more into health and fitness, or the other person just isn't and is, overweight and just not focused on diet and exercise. So the person that is, is either critical, and even if they are critical, well, you used to look so good, you shouldn't be eating that. Don't do that. It's more of that no, negative. And the person who wants to look and feel better it pushes them further away from being motivated to do things because it's more of that negativity. How do you deal with the person that, you love them and they're there for you, and they don't even realize that they're hurting you more so than they're helping you? How do we coach and help those we love if we want to help them to get on a better path?
I really think whenever someone has said to me, you should eat this or you should do that, I'll do it in front of them, but then when I walk away, it's so hurtful that I do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can really coach anyone. You just live your life in the healthiest way you can, hoping they'll see. Now, if you're the cook in the house, you cook the way you should for the two of you. If you go out to dinner, you eat what you know you should, or you say to that person, let's take a walk. Will you walk with me? I'd like to walk and talk with you. You do it in a very gentle, kind way, because as soon as you start pointing fingers, and as soon as you start calling them fat or whatever, you're not exercising,
rolling
you're
the eyes.
Those are all negative things they'll take in. They're not going to change, because they've been hurt. And they'll only do it when they're ready to change. We always said when I was working in alcoholism services that people are only going to stop drinking when they bottom out or when they are ready. No matter how much you tell them not to drink, they're not going to do it. So they have to be ready. And on our spiritual path, the master will arise when you're ready. The teacher will be there. And so if you're the one in charge of meals, it's easy. You just don't have desserts in the house. You just don't cook unless it's a healthy way to cook. You have more fruits and vegetables in the refrigerator. You don't have those things because they certainly are temptations. And you really, if you see a little change in someone, you capitalize on it. You did really, really well. I'm just so proud of how you did that. You exercised today. I got to tell you, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
And those things inspire, and they are more life-affirming than any negative. People don't want to hear the negatives. They really don't.
No.
They really don't.
No.
I have one last story for you.
Okay. Salvatore was afraid he was going to miss the camera, as you noticed, that he wants to be on camera.
He's been very good, by the way. Pets are wonderful.
I was just going to, right? Mindfulness.
Mindfulness. They bring down
stress reduction.
Stress and blood pressure. And for older people, my mother has a little dog, and she is her lifesaver. She's a little brat. The little thing is very spoiled. But she just adores her and follows her around all day long. And it certainly has been my mother's lifesaver. But the story is, my husband went to St. Vincent College, and so we have, St. Vincent College was started by the Benedictine monks, and we still have really close friends there. And this is the story of a man who I put on a pedestal as the epitome of spirit. And he's Father Max Duman, And he, all of his life, for 30 years, went to the Arctic and collected bugs and butterflies and leaves and all sorts of things. I didn't know there were leaves in the Arctic, but apparently there are. And he collected a lot of stuff. 30 years worth of all of his findings in one building. And unfortunately, one night the building burned down and his entire collection was destroyed.
Oh.
So they call Father Max and they said, Max, everything's gone. The building's gone, everything's gone. And the first words out of his mouth were, was anyone hurt? And they said, no, thank God. Just your collection. He said, then I'll go back to the Arctic and start all over again, as long as no one was hurt.
Beautiful story.
Isn't that incredible?
Exactly.
That is the epitome of spirit for me.
Yes, that's a beautiful story. And you know, I think it's a great way to conclude, because what it's saying is that no matter what, don't feel that all is lost, all is forgotten. It's never too late.
Never too late.
You're here, you're alive, you've got a lot to give. Everybody, and I'm a big believer, everybody has a special gift of some sort to give. Find your special gift, find your spirituality, and
be patient
make
with
your
yourself.
legacy.
Be patient with yourself and know you're going to make mistakes. Know you're not always going to say and do the right things, and it's okay. We're human.
Yes, don't be so hard on yourself.
Don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah, and like you say, go find your little place to meditate. Don't go and eat a bag of potato chips, and don't say, I can't exercise now, I'm so depressed, I'm so down. Say, you know what, I'm going to go take a walk and clear my head. I know I screwed up. Let me go clear my head and think about how I'm not going to let that happen again.
Or read an inspirational book.
Yes.
I think that's a real positive way to stay mindful.
Yes, fantastic.
Absolutely.
I can't thank you enough. It's such an honor to have you with me, dear. Thank you.
It is a joy to be
always
here
a
with
pleasure.
you, dear friend.
Yes, and we're so blessed to have you, and I'm so glad all is great with your health, and my love to your family.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. We talk so much about mindfulness and meditation, and yoga is wonderful, but I just wanted to give you a real quick demo of how easy it is to get into a mindful meditative state. You could be at the office, you could be in the middle of a really crazy day, you could be getting up in the morning and just doing it while you're in bed, or when you get in bed in the evening, right as you get into bed you can do it. Simply close your eyes and put yourself in a very, very, very wonderful place mentally. Think of things you love. I'd love to close my eyes and think about beautiful water and a gorgeous beach and a beautiful sunset or a lovely sunrise. Those are the things that inspire me to relax. Think about how you want to rejuvenate, because if you don't calm down and you don't take those extra couple of minutes just to get into you, you're not going to be able to give your absolute best. Those moments are so important, and like I said, so simple. It could be just a couple of minutes, it could be 10 minutes, it could be a half hour. It's whatever you have. But especially during those really irritating times when you want to go and eat that half a cake or quart of ice cream or bag of potato chips, or you're just ready to scream at somebody, go to a quiet place, close your eyes, get into a beautiful, beautiful place in your mind and relax for a few minutes. It makes a huge difference in your day. I'm Mary Pipino. Thank you so much for watching, and this is Fit for You.